Good afternoon. I'm Graham Thomas, the moderator for this panel today, and we have 4 individuals who have kindly agreed to share their views and input on the design in the hybrid age. There's some housekeeping things to go through first. So here, we are talking about the impact of the hybrid on design. Our agenda today is we've got 4 learning objectives that we're going to go through. The key thing on this slide of the agenda at the end, we should have, if all goes well, a few moments for question and answer, but we will be monitoring the chat for anybody who wants to has a comment or a question that they would like addressed by our panelists. I'm not going to sort of read all of this, but this is our course overview. The recording will be available. We have 4 learning objectives in order to qualify for continuing education credits, and these will be sent out for those who have signed on, requested credits to them. So I would like to start with the introductions for the panel members, starting with you, Brian.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Aluni with Torty Allison Partners. We're about a 120-person firm, primarily here in the DC metro area, but we have offices in Los Angeles, Tampa, small office in Philly and Istanbul. And we'll talk about this topic from a perspective of a larger firm. Jennifer?
Thanks. My name is Jennifer Burbeck. I'm the principal partner at MCD Studio. We're a very small firm in Bethesda, Maryland. As opposed to Brian's over 100 plus, we have 4, 3 full-time and 1 part-time. We mostly focus on custom residential work, renovations, additions, new homes, and we also handle some light commercial work like tenant fit-outs or restaurant fit-outs. Rob?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. Robert Sands with Wilmot Sands Architects. We're located in Rockville, Maryland, and we're also hoping to provide some insight from the perspective of a large firm. We specialize 100% in healthcare design and planning. We've partnered with many of the prominent local healthcare organizations, such as Innova Health System in Northern Virginia, Adventist Healthcare, which is largely here in the Potomac Valley area. But we also partner with some more national firms, such as Baptist Health in South Florida. And our firm here works on a very diverse project size and type, including campus master plans, complicated phase renovations, new additions, replacement hospitals. So very happy to be participating in the panel and looking forward to sharing some of our experience from a large firm perspective. And Gabby?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby Angulato. I am an architectural designer at Luterio Thomas. We are a medium-sized firm located in National Harbor, Maryland. We typically work from small to medium-sized commercial projects, working on things from education to commercial. So I'm glad to share my experiences from a medium-sized firm in the area.
And I'm Graham Thomas, principal with Luterio Thomas. We do a mixture of transportation type projects. We're doing the Potomac Yard, new metro station. We also have quite a bit of federal work, and we are working with Wilmot Sands on a number of healthcare projects. We're excited to say. So with that, let's get right into the presentation. Okay. So I would like our panelists to really discuss, what has been the impact on their business model and the impact on design for them. So I don't know, who would like to start off?
I can start. Happy to start. Here at Wilmot Sands, we do allow remote work, but we do encourage our staff to come in at least 3 days a week to promote both an active and passive collaboration environment. We do have tools such as Microsoft Teams set up to allow for free communication, even if some of our team members are remote. But we do strive to be responsive to each of our staff members' comfort level, as we navigate our way into and out of these spikes of the pandemic, and try to get back to some sort of normalcy. We have kind of noticed a couple of pros and cons that we are constantly evaluating. In terms of pros, it obviously allows for more flexible schedule for our staff, which can be great for morale. However, in our healthcare sector, we do strive to provide instant feedback and answers for some of the hot issues that come up on some of our large, projects, especially during construction. While we do allow flexibility, we do try to still maintain kind of that office hour block of time where we can be responsive and active with our clients. And then maybe I'll touch on one negative and maybe pass it off to another panel member. We, in a larger firm setting, we do have several staff members from different generations. So we've seen over the past couple of years that there has been a kind of a technology gap at times that can make it more difficult for some of our more experienced architects with a wealth of knowledge, that they do have to mentor some of the younger graduate architects if they're not coming into the office as frequently. So that's just something we notice. We're trying to work through that and try to still encourage that kind of mentor-mentee relationship amongst our staff.
Jennifer, how does it work for your organization?
Yeah, so we have 4 people total. We have 3 full-time and 1 part-time. Our newest hire was hired last year, and she's actually never worked in the office. So she's always been a remote worker for us. So obviously we do support a hybrid work solution, and I purposely haven't put any fancy background so you can see that I am not in an office setting, obviously. So we are supporting a hybrid work solution. Originally, we were trying to pull things down from the server when we thought this was a finite thing. Now that it's been now that the writing's on the wall a little bit, we've had to adapt. So we use remote PC primarily for the remote workers to kind of log into their machine in the office. So that way we're all still working off of the server at the office, and we don't need to worry about the backups or anything like that. And we are primarily a Revit firm, and we found that by using this remote PC, we haven't really had any issues with the floating licenses that we have for some add-on softwares. For example, we used a lot of Enscape. We don't have 4 licenses of Enscape because none of us are always in it at the same time. So we're able to just utilize fewer licenses for the same amount of people. And we use a lot of the Google Hangouts chat that's basically open throughout the day. And it tells you whether you're at your desk or you stepped away to walk your dog or for lunch. And it's a really easy way for us to connect, so that we can say, do we need to have a face-to-face, or is this like a quick thing? And then we're using Zoom for a lot of our face-to-face interactions. We do, the only thing we try to set up is that we're asking that if you're working from home, we kind of have a semblance of what your working hours are. They should be sort of what they would anticipate to be in the office. Not a big deal if you step away from your desk for 10-15 minutes, but I need to know, like, if you're gone for an hour, just put on your calendar, I'm gone for an hour. We know. Gabby, how's it working over by you?
So here at Vittorio Thomas, as I mentioned before, we are a medium-sized firm. So having everyone in the office doesn't create any crowding issues in terms of COVID. But I would say, since we're all primarily in the office, it does create sort of a disruption trying to figure out how to and include working from home more into our policies. So I would say I do prefer working from home, or not working from home, working in the office as opposed to working from home, just because we're able to have a lot of spontaneous conversation. So if I'm at home, I can't turn around and ask my coworker how to dissolve a design issue. Whereas I can also eavesdrop into other people's conversations and offer my input as well. But I would say, similar to Jennifer, we do have the resources of remote desktop connection. So we're gradually learning how to incorporate that more into our policies.
Brian?
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk a little bit about how we've adapted. We were fortunate in that we were using video conferencing long before the pandemic because we had a number of international projects and a lot of projects that were not local. And so we were adept to using the software programs, at least for video conferencing. And then we were shocked. I mean, we had a meeting, I remember, as the pandemic was unfolding in March, where we got everyone in a room and basically said, okay, we're going to be shutting down. And then we all moved away and found generally we were successful, although it was interesting. The biggest difficulties were with construction administration on site, but some of the best benefits were with construction administration, where we're going through submittals and doing RFIs. Those folks can be really efficient because they didn't have to travel. They just got to their desk and they were really, certain folks were just really solid. But one of the challenges, like Gabrielle said, that we found was mentoring young professionals. All that learning you have when you're in a studio environment and you're overhearing the conversation next to you goes away. And so that's been a challenge. The positives have been flexibility for people. Another positive has been being able to retain key people. We had one person who moved to Houston to follow her husband, and through the use of certain software, she's been stayed on the job the whole time without a hiccup, and it was in, moved and was working the next day on, from home. There, we had a partner who moved to Philadelphia again to follow his partner, and that person stayed part of the fold. And then we had another senior associate who followed his wife to Tampa, and we retained him, and he helped build us an office there. Literally, we have a 5-person setup there now that came from his just staying with us and helping us develop work down there. And so he grew into a partner through the connectivity that we had with that, with being down there. We're finding that we have better documentation of communication now with more email. A lot of what we have to do is documented, and we're using far less paper than we did. Where software rents are going up, and that's a challenge. We're always monitoring licenses and how we're using them. Quality control has been an issue, just in general, both in design and in making sure that we're on top of technical issues. We've had some security issues that we'll talk about a little later. Some people, personality-wise, you really need to chase them down to ensure that they're fully focused. Others just take on so much and they don't let you know that they've been overwhelmed. And you can see that where you're no longer moving from meeting to meeting, which takes time. So you can schedule one meeting after another meeting after another meeting. And there are some people who just really got burned out with 8 or 9 meetings a day. So they do their meetings and then would done nothing at their desk and basically start working at 7 o'clock on the stuff that they really wanted to get to at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that's been a challenge for us.
Brian, I don't know if you were looking at the chat, but I think you answered Joe McCoy's question about sort of the way of remote working to deal with staffing needs. I think good response. Hopefully Joe appreciated that.
Yeah.
So moving on to sort of the tools section, we've done some research preparing for this seminar, and we saw there were kind of really 3 groups of collaboration tools out there. The standard sort of project management, schedules and everything. But we're really interested in sort of the design collaboration part. How has this hybrid impacted design? So this was on the left is an old colleague of mine, Ken Smith's studio, where he would do everything on these poster boards. And used that as his medium of presenting to clients, very hands-on manual process. And I think he's got over 1,000 of them in his studio. Whereas we were just involved in a thing with ZGF, and where they used a mirror board to do a similar presentation for the client, just looking at 2 versions. We also had sort of looked at sort of different types, and I think this will be available to anyone who wants to explore these types of collaboration tools from VR and others. And getting back into sort of what I think Brian had talked about, if he would like to start talking about how being able to even get to hybrid, let alone the impact, there's some important steps.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and interestingly, I see Joseph McCoy's question more specifically. And so the big challenges are sort of here. And luckily, as a larger firm, what we have is a dedicated IT team that helps us be efficient and maximize our potential. When we've allowed people to go remote or even move away, what we haven't done is we've chosen not to hire. There are people approaching us to work with us who want to stay like in Portland or on the West Coast or in a city we're not in. And we've decided that any people joining us, we want to be able to work with them initially. And then if life changes and we believe in the person and we're committed to them, then we move on. But we do feel that interpersonal connection is important. So I hope that it helps answer your question. But in terms of getting to that collaboration point, our IT leader suggested that we talk about these 3 issues first, which is getting access, having the access be secure, and then allowing for mobility. And so go to the next slide. We'll talk those quickly. But having access, you got to know what you need and how you get back and forth from your data and from your equipment to your data. We went to a cloud solution. Originally, we had a server that everybody was going into, and we found that we had less bottlenecks, and the IT folks can talk about this more specifically, but we were set up an arrangement that everyone was going to data locations that were more efficient to get to by being in the cloud than as opposed to being dedicated on site. Then we just established the tools to provide communication and access, some of which we've gone backwards a little bit, from my opinion. I really love GoToMeeting, but it got expensive. GoToMeeting had a lot more drawing tools in the meeting format as opposed to some of the other systems we've used. Teams is starting to add that now. Security, we had some challenges. I mean, we get hacked. Every holiday, folks try to hack into your computer system. So we see over 10,000 attempts at hacks during the holiday breaks. And so we have some really serious, really annoying security that constantly bugs us, but it helps us keep our data safe. We got phished once, and they got into our system, tried to lock us up, but luckily we had backed up everything, so it wasn't a big deal. So you really need to be, if you're doing all this remote work, you got to make sure the people you want getting into your data can get in, and the people you don't can't. And so that's what this slide is all about next. Mobility, once you've gotten that, then you want to be able to allow those people to be wherever they need to be. So I'm traveling to Dallas this week, and I'm going to be setting up a full office, working there for 3 days, and being able to work from a hotel room, as long as I've got good Wi-Fi, is critical. And so having software that can interact with good Wi-Fi is important. So BIM 360 is really important for us with Revit. And then using Bluebeam Review 3D, I can use it when I'm in the hotel room, but I can't use it when I'm on the plane. That's just something we deal with. And then this is getting into some of those tools that I was just talking to. We've used Miro a little bit. I have found it less useful, but actually we do a lot of cut and paste. So for Word, InDesign, Photoshop, we're just emailing files back and forth and working that way, outside of the programs that are set up for online collaboration, like BIM 360, like Bluebeam. That's it.
I might chime in, Brian, real quick,
Yeah.
and just say that in particular, besides Revit, Bluebeam has been probably one of our most used tools. It's such a robust just PDF markup software that allows for real-time collaboration on the same document. That has really helped us to streamline kind of our day-to-day workflow of the traditional kind of markup handoff draft workflow has really been streamlined just by Bluebeam and the studio sessions you can set up. Some of our projects in the healthcare sector are huge, and when we were talking hundreds of sheets, which can take weeks, to QC to mark up. So just having the ability through the software to be marking up while someone else is already starting to pick up, the first few sheets has been really invaluable, and that's really ramped up now, in the post kind of COVID hybrid environment for us.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. We just got, we're working on a project right now, and it's in Dallas, and the client did their own markup of a PDF. We did a markup of our PDFs side by side. We were then able to merge all the markups into one document, still work on it actively. So there's an active drawing. So literally we're having a team highlight their markups, the ones they picked up in that, and we have a deadline, and there will be some markups we know are going to be after that deadline. And when we're done at the deadline, we'll just send that file to the client as a real-time communication of what's happening on the project, what's been done, what hasn't been done, what we expect to pick up later. And that will ease a lot of our intercommunication, and we have found Bluebeam very effective as a tool. Just it's more empowered than Adobe the Acrobat has been.
Jennifer, how does it work for, let's say, a small firm? I know you talked about Google Docs.
Yeah, so Bluebeam, I've seen all those flashy presentations that they give, and they're always at the conventions, and it's always like, you're just like, wow. And then for a small firm, we just see the price tag associated with that, and it's just not worth it. There's 4 of us. If someone can't be in something at the same time, it's usually not a big deal. So what we actually found, and by fluke, we had purchased them right before COVID started. We purchased some iPads with the intention for using them for field work so that we wouldn't have quite so much paper going out. But that's turned out to be super helpful, because with the iPen, we can just write up and mark up very quickly and shoot that back through the iClouds. We use Google mostly for the Hangouts and the chats. We don't use the documents so much because we utilize our server, because we prefer to have that stuff more in our house than Google's house, which I won't pretend to fully understand. We are not, we do model, we render in the cloud sometimes, but that's really the only thing that we're using the Autodesk cloud for.
Okay.
And if we have IT problems, myself and my business partner wear multiple hats. So I've been to Micro Center this week already, so we solve our own problems.
Gabby, which would you say your favorite collaboration tools?
A lot of these, I would say I'm liking Mural more often, just because you see everyone putting all of their work onto one pinup board. But I do want to comment on something Brian mentioned before about access and having an IT team. Similar to Jennifer, we don't have the benefit of having an IT team. We have about 2 people in the office with all the passwords. But the thing about that is, if someone doesn't have all the tools that they need, if they don't have a Revit license, if they don't have the proper Revit version, and that just hinders the design process. So it's just trying to figure out what those obstacles are, especially for a smaller firm, and how to attack those.
I think the biggest problem we run into from the small firm problem has actually probably been weather-based. We have everything is on a UPS, but that only holds it for so long. So I'm in Silver Spring, my office is in Bethesda. It could have gotten knocked out for much longer than my house. Now somebody's driving over there to just manually turn on all the machines. And sometimes you just don't notice, because this happens on a Sunday morning, and Monday morning, everybody's like, what's happening?
So Scott asked a question about Autodesk BIM 360. We have projects that are in 360, and we have projects that are not, that are just run from the raw file. And it really depends on how expansive the collaboration group is for the particular project. If it's a bigger project with consultants all over the country, most likely it's going to be in BIM 360. If it's a smaller job and the team's local, and much like what Jennifer was saying, that there's only a few people in there at one time, we might run it off a local server. And we've done both, and it's just a cost management issue. Although I think we're now at a point where we're paying for the full BIM 360 for everything, so I think we can do everything in 360. But even then, there are some consultants who are struggling, and so we respect that too, and are careful with our smaller MEP and structural engineers and those folks who don't want to get overladen with a lot of license requirements. But that's always a challenge. So this is a little bit talking about our using the collaborative softwares.
So, at one point, we thought we would write a brief paper to share with everyone about what's happening in the hybrid world, and just Googling out there, you will find probably 100,000 references already. There seems to be a growth industry out there on supporting businesses on how to work. We've selected a handful of reports from different organizations that give an overview of what is the impact of hybrid in general in all businesses, and different types of hybrid. They talk about the employer mandated hybrid, where the employer dictates which days you're on and off working from home. There's the free-for-all hybrid, where you wake up in the morning and you decide you're working from home. And Envoy.com has developed a tool, and this describes it, about how to track. If you were, let's say, a Torty Gallus with hundreds of employees trying to know who is in which day, who is out, there's a whole new software industry out there to support you. So as they say, for every problem, there's an opportunity. So I was just going to say, Brian, we're now going to go through each, individual panelist, and they're going to talk about how their practice sort of looks to address some of these things. And we'll start obviously with Brian.
Right. So this is our new office. You can see it in the background behind me as well as on the screen. We got lucky in that our lease ran out right when the beginning of COVID. And so, and our office wasn't ready yet. So we weren't even able to move in, and we didn't want to move into an office. So we were able to string along our old office lease at a very discounted rate. But we were in that office for 35 years, something like that, longer, a very long time. And it was, it was not fitting our needs anymore in a lot of ways. Like we had carts with TV screens on them that our IT folks would push around when we needed to have a VC in a room. And so what we've moved to now, next slide, please, is an office environment that's really set up for the new, where we think we're going. And we have this flex space in the middle of the office you see here, that we can collapse a glass wall and combine rooms together for larger office gatherings. But we realized we need less server space because we're going to the cloud. We had less storage space. We went paperless. It was a big change for us. We did smaller desk spaces. So we used to be C shapes. We went to L shapes, and we've now got a lot of people just on a single I desk for younger folk in the new office. We provided a lot more meeting rooms of different sizes and uses. So we have a couple of touchdown spaces that are great and useful for small interactions, or if you're just having a one-on-one VC like we're doing here. And then we have, again, we have the ability to bring the whole office into that central space. I mean, culturally, it was important for us to get that central space together, because at the end of our fiscal year, we have promotions and a celebration. We talk about our firm performance, how we did, and that happens. In fact, that image, I think, is from our first promotion we did in this office, and just to how we bring people together. And then, and again, even when we're doing that, we need to communicate now with 3 other offices. And so by having that with multiple cameras in that area to communicate to Tampa, communicate to Los Angeles, Philadelphia, to bring those people so they feel like they're part of the interaction was important for us. And so all of that came together for us in the redesign of our new space. And we're fortunate. And I think it's going to help us grow and be more successful, and allows us to be more collaborative, both in person and online.
Jennifer?
So I took this from a more design perspective. We tried really hard not to change our process once we had to switch to this hybrid. I mean, first it was entirely remote, and now we're back to a hybrid solution. So we're a very collaborative firm, and we like for everyone in the firm, no matter your level, to have some sort of input into the design options that we're presenting. So when we were in person, it wasn't atypical for us to be setting aside time to just sit around the conference table. And we can do this as a very small firm. It's kind of like a family atmosphere, and everybody is just rapid fire sketching on trace. Some ideas are very developed, some are not. Some you kind of are like, this is probably not going to work, but maybe I'll try it to see if there's any bits that have merit. So we really tried to maintain that when we went to remote and hybrid. So we still use a lot of trace. One thing that has kind of been added is that now there's digital trace options available through the Morpholio app, or even just the sketching tool just on the iPad, or if you have one of those tablets, you can do the same thing. So our process has always been generate a lot of ideas quickly, whittle them down, and then try to pick out the bits and pieces that we think best answer the questions, the problems, and find the solution from there. So when we are in person for meetings, which does happen sometimes for some of our clients, they just prefer it. At this point in time, we're sort of handling it on a preferential basis. Some clients do prefer in person when it is possible, but we found that Zoom is actually super helpful for jetting out these these things that would have been a waste of time, frankly, to drive an hour, to have a 15-minute conversation, to drive back to your desk. We can handle that on Zoom. And we use the markup tools very heavily. I personally don't think it's quite as impressive as rolling out the trace backwards in front of your client at their dining room table, but we've gotten a little better at kind of marking up and getting the ideas across for people in a virtual setting. If you want to go to the next one. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the last thing that we are really focusing on is we're trying to leverage the tools that we were already using. In our office, we have an Oculus that we were using for VR. Since COVID has hit, no one except people in our office has put their head into the thing, which is fine. But we found that having these images, because most of our time in a residential firm, most of my time is spent teaching a homeowner how to read the stuff that we just know how to do. So you have to try to help them understand. So we really tried to step up our game, because we found that sending people a picture, like the color ones on this, they're kind of like, oh, I get it now, I want that. Or they can kind of be more a part of the conversation of, oh, no, you know what, we're close. I think I was thinking more like this. So we really tried to just leverage tools that we were already using, and the clients love this. And this makes for a much quicker conversation with them also, because they are no longer, help me visualize, because I've just told you, here's what it can look like.
Robert?
Yeah, so I'm also going to kind of talk more in terms of the design process from a kind of larger scale project perspective. So we've actually found the most challenges in the interface with the client. Design projects in the healthcare sector can be extremely complicated with amazingly complex equipment and machinery incorporated into the spaces we design. So it's really imperative that we have a heavy interface with the end user those will be the ones that are treating patients in these spaces. And essentially the rooms just become another tool in their toolbox when they're treating patients. So, naturally design meetings for these larger kind of scale projects can involve several stakeholders. I mean, sometimes there's 10 plus stakeholders in a meeting for a single room type. And it's important to keep everyone engaged in the discussion in order to reach a consensus when you have that many people, kind of that many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. And so while Zoom has made it easier for some of those folks to participate, despite a very busy healthcare provider schedule, we found that it's also made it exceedingly easy to get distracted. In our experience, it's become very common in a Zoom meeting to hear a stakeholder say, "Sorry, can you repeat that? I was multitasking," or can we go back a couple slides? So this really can slow us down and slow down the momentum of the discussion, and we found that it even frustrates their colleagues that are sitting there with us and spending their time trying to collaborate on a design solution. It's not that this didn't happen pre-Zoom. I mean, it was the extra second of having to think about standing up, walking out of a meeting room to take a phone call, versus just kind of turning off your camera and checking your phone real quick and just kind of disengaging from the discussion. So that's an ongoing challenge that we're dealing with. But now that we're kind of not completely past, but we're trying to move past the lockdown, COVID, restrictions and all that, we're trying to get back to on some major milestones of the design process to get back to like the large group in-person collaboration. For some of our larger projects that will span 3 to 4 years of design and construction, the initial project schedule planning is a major first step in kind of kicking off some of these projects. So on the left photo here, you'll see one of those sessions that we held, I think it was 2 months ago, where you're really setting design milestones, construction milestones, within the first week of the project, and just everyone's there putting up their thoughts and ideas on what we need to have by this certain milestone. And you see those kind of post-it notes on there, and just having everyone there and kind of collaborating in person has been super important for that one particular meeting type. We also, on the bottom right, you'll see what we call a mock-up, where once the design is kind of crystallized a little bit more and we've actually started construction, we will in one of the shell spaces we'll set up this mock-up where we bring in some of the real life equipment. We kind of put up sticky pictures of like outlets and things that really help the nurse or doctor who, like Jennifer referred to before, may not have really understood what she was looking at or he was looking at, in the meeting. They get a chance to see it kind of in 3 dimensions in life, put hands on things, shift things around. And that really enables us to be able to provide them, the design solution that's going to help them the most to provide the healthcare and to heal these patients that are in their care.
Gabby, I should, before she starts, they're saying Gabby managed to do her entire master's degree remotely. So Gabby, if you can talk about your experience, what it was like. I know in COVID you were meant to have met some of these people, but that may not be the case. So Gabby, over to you.
Right, so I actually had the privilege of finishing my master's degree completely 100% online at Lawrence Technological University. So at the time when I applied, there's only 4 NAP accredited master's programs for architecture, and that number is continuing to grow. One of my coworkers actually just got accepted into a program in Rochester. So that number is definitely growing. And I would say since it's such a fairly new concept, we're still trying to figure out what the proper tools are for an online architecture program. So if you go to the next slide, I would say the main 4 key components or 3 key components for an online program is you have to have a platform for collaboration, which was Mural. You have to have a platform for communication, which we primarily used Slack for my classes. And then you have to find a platform that is good for information exchange. And here we mostly use Google Drive. So on this screenshot over here, 2 different screenshots, it's a picture of one of our Mural boards from one of my online studio classes. Each of our names are at the top, and it was actually a design shred. So then everyone put different pictures of their sketches, different pictures and screenshots of their models. different precedent images that they're thinking about for their design. And then if you look at the different colored rectangles, we're leaving different comments on everyone's work. So it shows evidence of a true hybrid collaboration that we did during our online studios. And since it was a mural board program, any of our professors at any point could join the mural board and see what we're working on. So if you go to the next slide. Next slide. So on the next slide, I wanted to show that with our online program, it has a lot of flexibility with its students. Yeah, there you go. So it allows our students to still work full time. Most of my classmates were working full time at firms, and also a lot of my classmates were parents. If you look at that picture on the right, one of my classmates actually had her son in most of our classes. And she wasn't the only one as well. We had a lot of kids auditing our classes from time to time. But with this hybrid design, you're able to go to classes whenever you want, primarily during after work, since most of us were working. And then since they're recorded, if you ever miss something, Zoom has the benefit of recording all of your sessions. So you can always go back and learn whatever you missed. And I think that's the thing with online learning and hybrid design is that you can do whatever you want, follow your own interests, and still pursue architecture at the same time. So that hybrid design allows you that flexibility to still pursue everything you want in life. So if you go to the next slide, one last point that I wanted to bring up is that with hybrid design and online learning, it allows you to expand that use of technology. And by this, here's a screenshot of one of my critiques, and you can see the little sketches on the right where my professor's telling me everything that's wrong with my design. But basically, you're allowed to combine traditional architecture, which is sketching, physical models, and you're allowed to combine that with the new technological route with Revit and BIM. So rather than just getting rid of sketching and trace paper, we're using it as a supplement to all of our new collaboration tools, such as BIM and Revit. So I think this is definitely where that hybrid age is going to with the architecture field, is using how to combine more of the technological route with that traditional route for the design process.
I know there's a lot of discussion going on in terms of how do you become an architect and the costs and time involved. And sort of obviously this is one way that you can actually do your master's degree and at the same time keep working. I must say, admire Gabby being able to do a full day of work and then 5 o'clock see her sort of get on her laptop and attend class after that. I think it's good, but it's a challenge. So I think sort of getting on to our last objective is looking at some of the positives and negatives of what it's like. You know, is hybrid a good thing for the profession? Has it helped? And others. So maybe Jennifer,
Sure, start.
throw this one to you.
Yeah, so I think the hybrid model has been really interesting to kind of be forced to live through, and now you can kind of make the decision. I think the hybrid model at our office is here to stay. As a small firm, I think the benefit that we can offer to people, because we don't have a lot of these glamorous benefits that these larger firms may be able to offer, is we can offer kind of that flexibility. So particularly with school starting up again for the kiddos, like I know that this hybrid thing can be helpful if, you know, oh, my kid has it's a sports day and I want to be out for the afternoon, so I'm just going to pick up early in the morning at home and no problem. So I do think it's kind of here to stay. The one of the major issues that we've seen is that we like to bring on a student intern either for a semester or for the summer. Both my business partner and I had a really strong and positive IDP, now AXP experience, and we wanted to promote that to others. We tried to bring on we tried to continue this during the pandemic, and we found it really challenging to bring on a completely green person with no office experience and try to teach them remotely. Just office, how to be in an office, drawing, design practices, and even like the basic stuff of like, oh, here's the minimum sizes for a bathroom. It was just really hard to translate that through a screen. As a small firm owner, we're wearing a lot of hats, and I didn't necessarily have a lot of time to be spending basically like the whole day on Zoom kind of teaching a young professional. What we didn't realize is that when we were in the office, we were kind of organically handing this off between everybody. It was kind of like everybody had adopted this person, and if they had an issue, like everybody could kind of jump in. But on Zoom, it seemed much more like here's your point person, you're going to go to them. And it was just really challenging. I'm not sure, we definitely did not find a successful way to work through that. I mean, we wanted a really positive experience for everyone. We felt we were letting them down. They were probably let down. So I think being back in the office in a little bit, like for a hybrid solution, would help us to kind of start that up again.
Okay, so maybe either Robert or Brian, for a larger firm, do you feel there's an acceptance to this, or is there resistance to hybrid working?
I think to be competitive, we're having to accept the flexibility that these kinds of software and the pandemic is exposed to the world is possible, for empowering all, other kinds of life work balances. And I think that's a healthy thing for the industry, as Jennifer was indicating. We are trying to figure out how to work through it. So for us, what we do is we have, we suggest 4 days in the office. We have 2 absolute anchor days. So there are 2 days a week where everyone is here. So those are the days we can schedule group firm-wide meetings and lunch and learns and those kinds of things. And then we flex out on the other days. And then for those who do a lot of construction administration, they can take a travel day as part of their work in office days. So for me, I'm spending a day in Baltimore and then 1 day home and the rest here in the office. And for a lot of us, I think it's helped us have a healthier and less stressful life in many ways, because we're able to juggle our world and have more control over our home life versus our work life. And you just need to make sure you surround yourself with people who are able to do that and you feel you can trust will do that. And for the most part, I think we found in our case that the vast majority of everyone here is really, it's almost, we found that people were putting in the end result of 2020, 2021, where people were actually worked more in those years than we had in the past. And we didn't ask them to work more, they just did. And I think part of that was because travel time was taken away and they were just stuck at home. And so will that continue in the future? It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, a lot of people didn't take vacations in 2020 and 2021, and they will start doing that now. And so that will change the dynamic a smidge, but also, again, in a healthy way for the folks who work here. And we're excited that we can do that and have meetings again. And so I think our industry is forever, and the world and business in general is forever changed. And we're trying to figure out how to embrace it and how to be successful with the changes and how to maximize the potential of it for our success for ourselves and for our clients.
Okay, I'm seeing a question out there, and I know Jennifer talked about the challenges of mentoring. Do you feel, are there some employees that just can't professionally handle working remotely? It's just not in their DNA. And how do you handle, having those sort of, as they say, hard conversations with remote workers that you feel are not being as productive, put it politely, as you would like? Scott, not Scott, Robert, Brian.
It is very difficult. Luckily, we haven't had too much of that occurrence. But you know, everyone's an adult, and sometimes being an adult is having tough conversations, and it's not to belittle anyone. It's just to kind of reset expectations and try to recalibrate, you know, folks's expectations of what work is, and yeah, it's just having an adult conversation about what it means to be a professional, and maybe try to key in on what their aspirations might be, you know, in their profession, and try to rekindle, you know, the passion that they had in the first place for entering the field.
And I would echo on that. I think I mean, it's just the kind of tough conversation you have about underperformance in any realm. You're just now adding this aspect to it. And, you know, standard methodologies work. Everything Rob said, including the sandwich method, you start talking about, you know, what gets them energized, how do you energize, how do you bring that energy through, and then you have the tough conversations. Then again, you end that conversation with the supportive, you know, how we're a team, and that's, you know, it's a difficult conversation. We have, again, as a larger firm, we actually have some frameworks that we used as benchmarks for our folks, and we have a whole program for emerging professionals it's probably stronger now than it's ever been, where they interact and communicate and have their own evening gatherings to discuss issues that are of import to that group. And so that helps along a lot as well for establishing professionalism, to Rob's point.
Right. That sounds good.
In a small firm, we try to reframe that as sort of like what can I do to help you? Because sometimes we found that it was as simple as, well, my computer at the office is set up on 2 monitors. I only have 1 monitor at home. This is getting to be really, so sometimes there were some easy things that we can smooth over. But now that we've gone back to this more hybrid approach, we definitely have those that prefer to come into the office, and they are more productive on the days they're in the office. And we just kind of accept that that's what happens, and that things are going to change as the different seasons come and go. So we have expectations set up at the beginning of the week as to what we're trying to put out at the end of the week. And there's always fires that pop up in the middle of that, so we have to be posed to move. But it's very much a kind of like a team effort. And how can I help you? How can you help me? So that it doesn't feel quite so one-sided.
I see another comment from Joe McCoy, and it's interesting that he's basically saying that this working method is really a design problem, and we need to have creative solutions. You know, just as you would create, you know, approach a unique design program challenge. So I think, you know, from what I've seen, we get the feeling, you know, hybrid work is here to stay in some sense. Going back for myself, as I remember back in the early 80s, just to date myself, when CAD, computer-aided design, and was coming into the office, and architects didn't want to have anything to do with it. This was just a drafting tool. The technologies and opportunities out there, as Joe had mentioned, these are challenges, but also there are opportunities to create new ways of working. Mm-hmm. But I do have one concern about this flexibility, this wonderful flexibility we now have, because it essentially gives us a 24/7 type of window. And whether, you know, employers are going to kind of take advantage of that, and people are going to feel that they're going to have to work longer hours or are more available all the time. Cell phone, the mobile phone, where you could email people and expect them to respond in minutes. So, you know, I think we're still learning how to deal with this, in the sense that potentially, because you are available 24/7, even though you're remote, there's that challenge to keep working those extra hours. I see emails, submittals, RFIs being responded to in our office at 11, 12 o'clock at night, and even some at 1 and 2 in the morning. And maybe that's because somebody wants to do that, or whether you've got a contractor or somebody breathing down your neck saying, I must have an answer or else. So, you know, there's good and bad. So just as we're coming up to sort of our end of time, I'd like to go around, you know, for the panel to kind of vote and say, you know, is this, has this made things better, worse, or are you undecided? So maybe as Jennifer, you're on screen, whether you would like to kind of go first to wrap up.
Sure. Is it good or bad? I think it's different. That's the very political answer. It's just different. And I think we've had 2 years to kind of learn how to do it. I think it's here to stay for MCD Studio. It may morph in how we handle things. We are trying to get to a point where folks are in the office 1 to 2 days a week. I'm not sure if we'll have anchor days because, you know, there are concerns in a small office about maintaining distances. And, you know, we've had scares from client meetings where we have crossed our fingers that we didn't just knock out the whole office in one fell swoop. So we are trying to be aware of that. But I think it's here to stay. And I think it's different. It has its pros and cons. I think the pros outweigh the cons for our office. And there's some caveats there that we just haven't figured out yet. So we'll keep working at it.
Gabby, final comment?
I do think it's a good thing, and I think it's here to stay, but also we don't have a choice if it stays or not, just because technology is going to continue to improve and we're going to have more ways to work remotely. But as humans, we're not meant to be in front of the computer 9 to 5 in the office every day. So it just gives us an opportunity to be more human, I guess.
Rob?
It's definitely got its pros and cons. I mean, I agree that it's here to stay. And as Brian alluded to, you know, in order to stay competitive, we're going to have to kind of accept that for better or for worse. I think the design process can adapt to kind of live in this world, and as software continues to evolve, there'll be newer and better tools to allow for that. But I do just want to say that I think there is something lost in the Zoom kind of meeting environment. I personally take a lot of cues from kind of nonverbal language, like body language and facial expressions that people make during meetings, and that can really help you kind of steer a conversation if you feel like you're getting a negative response, to kind of maybe take a step back and reassess. Or, you know, if everyone's kind of lighting up and they seem to be on board, then it kind of empowers you and encourages you to keep on course. So I do hope that there's a way to kind of try to recapture that. And like I said, certain milestones in our project timelines, we try to force that issue just to make sure that folks are engaged from the get-go. But yeah, it's certainly here to stay, and it's definitely got its pros. I definitely appreciate spending less time on the Beltway. So I'm all for that.
Yeah. So maybe Brian, you can have the last word.
So yeah, I mean, I think one thing this will require of us all is a heightened skills of knowing when to balance boundaries. I mean, when not to email, when to email, because we're blending our work and life in ways that had been unforeseen before, we need to be very sensitive and cognizant of how we communicate and when, and looking for the echoes of what we say and how they're received. And that's a big challenge for all of us. And, you know, all of our EQ quotient are going to have to go way up with these programs and with how we work, because it just is going to demand that of us, and particularly anyone in leadership in a firm. You're just going to need to be able to read the cues better, like Rob was saying. And so And that, you know, and that's the way we're going to have to change. We're going to get better at communicating, and the tools are there, but they also hinder our perceptions a little bit. And so, and we'll have a greater sensitivity to be successful.
Well, it's 1:02, and hopefully, even though we haven't been able to see the visual cues from our audience, or the nods and smiles or shaking heads,
Yeah.
I do agree with Joe McCoy that this is a design problem for us to solve, and I think we're very well positioned in terms of doing that. I can see a couple of thumbs up coming in. So I would particularly like to thank our panelists for taking the time to put together this presentation, putting their thoughts on paper, and discussing how their firms work. And hopefully everybody here in attendance, I think we had maybe 20 plus people, which I think is a pretty good turnout. And I see that there is some positive feedback coming in. Appreciate that, Nicole. And you know, it's interesting. We'll see how it goes. So with that, thank you very much. And I believe, you know, all those requiring their continuing education, Sue and Pam will be sending out your certificates, etc., and recording those. So again, thank you very much. Not sure if Sue will be the one who actually officially brings down the curtain on us.
And I will do that by ending the recording. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.